Welcome to the Marvel Cinematic University podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Canton III, and we are continuing our coverage of the Disney Plus series Echo, episodes 4 and 5, closing it out. Happy to be here, excited to be here, and I'm excited for everybody to check out patreon.com/MCUniversityPod. You can get our bonus content, $3 to get into the Discord, $8 to be a Avengers level member, and have an opportunity to appear on a subscriber mailbag with us. Appreciate everybody for supporting. In the meantime, I want to introduce the super producer, Jake Christie. Jake, how are you?
I'm doing well. Happy to be talking to you on this lovely MLK Monday. Watching the Bills and the Steelers come down to the wire. It's a wonderful time to talk.
Wonderful stuff. And we have a new guest. We have a first timer on this show. His name is Kevin Chuculate. I hope I got that right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, good. He's done some pop culture writing for A Tribe Called Geek. And apparently he does a lot of comic writing in general. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing good, doing good. I'm also you mentioned football a minute ago too. I'm a Green Bay fan, so I've been just ecstatic
Oh,
this
shout
last
out to you.
yeah,
What a
last
Congratulations.
day.
performance.
It's been a great
Hey,
day.
as someone who is not a Cowboys fan, anytime a team can give the smackdown to the Cowboys, I'm happy.
Yes, I had a double. It's just like things intersecting at the same time. Hating the Cowboys and loving the Packers. It was just checking all the pods today, even things I don't listen to, just to hear the first 15 minutes or so of everything, Nice victory lap.
Just incredible that the quarterback that you had last was traded to the team that we root for.
Oh.
And obviously you know how that went this season. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, shout out to Green Bay. We'll see what they do against San Francisco next week. But we are here to discuss Echo as we close
Mhm.
it out. But Kevin, as per usual, when somebody hasn't been on the show, we check in with them on what they thought of the initial offering. So the first three episodes, what were your vibes like? How did you feel? How did you take it in? Considering that you had reached out to us and said you would like to come on in regards because this is something very close to you. How did you
Mhm.
feel about the first three episodes?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you have a lot of a mixture of because you have like your critical lens, you have your cultural lens, you have your like you said, I'm a really nerd when it comes to comics, so I have that part of the lens. They all kind of intersect. So there was the part of it where I wrote, even when I wrote a review of the whole show, and I have a footnote that's about as long as the whole article about including a whole recap in the first episode. And I know you guys talked about that a little bit too, even in the last pod, but just kind of how they did that recap that I wasn't a big fan of because I felt even the rest of the episode was pretty great. Like there was like some really cool elements to it. Um, and so the first couple episodes, the first two, I absolutely could see how people could be like, oh, this is kind of a little you see parts of it that feel good, parts of it that are there, but it's not quite gelling. It's almost like having like good ingredients that didn't quite mix as great as you'd want them to almost. Even starting then with episode 3, it started to really pick up even for me just as like generally watching. But in another sense, there was obviously just being someone who's native. I'm Cherokee Nation, and so that's my tribe. And seeing people on screen like this, especially as someone who loves comics and just like is super into it and everything, is just an awesome thing. And I know I'm also someone who often says, representation, it's like the bare minimum, but it's still a minimum and it's still important. It still is there for a reason. It's still needed for a reason. And I just, it's exciting when we have a community that's so tight and in a lot of ways kind of smaller that all of us are on Twitter and we're all seeing people we know. We're seeing random people like, oh, I saw someone in the flashback episode and I was like, wait, they cast her also in one of the current episodes. I was like, but I don't think people would notice because she just kind of is in the background. And, it's a girl I knew, and my sister's friend was in it. And I was texting her, look at this person in the episode. And people knew people. So it was like a really cool celebration for a lot of people who are watching it. My mom, who does not at all care about comics. Like if I said comics, she would just roll her eyes and be like, I don't want to watch cartoons. And I was like, it's not a cartoon. And even her, when I told her everything else with it, she watched it with us and was like, "Oh, that was really good." She enjoyed it, and seeing about half the cast of Reservation Dogs in there was pretty nice too. There's a lot of people, and so it was on an uphill for me. So like it started off solid. I could see the potential for it and everything, and it like increasingly got better for those first couple of episodes with a couple of critiques and stuff. Almost everyone's mentioned the pacing, areas like that. I had some things where I was like, this doesn't even feel like they meant to do it this way, but that it was crammed in a certain way in which they were. It looks like they wanted to tell more of maybe their ancestors, or then maybe they didn't, and then they had to mush it together real quick. So some of that parts of it was a little choppy and not as enjoyable, but I enjoyed it overall in that first part of it.
Interesting. And yeah, I mean, coming into as we get to the end here, I wanted to kind of throw it to Jake for a second because I have thoughts on it. But after we talked last week about the first three and coming into it and having seen the last two, what would you say, Jake, is your general takeaway from the last two?
I think because of the pace of the first three, I kind of readjusted my expectations for how much I was expecting to get accomplished in the series, if that makes sense. Like, I realized pretty quickly with the pacing of the first three that the victory of the show was going to be Maya's self actualization and, more metaphorically defeating Kingpin than actually defeating him. I mean, obviously, I know he's looking to be a big part going forward. He's going to be the quote unquote street level Thanos. So, like, I obviously didn't expect him to get defeated. But from the perspective of this show being Maya Lopez's journey to understanding that, her past doesn't define her, but her past collectively is a part of her, if that makes sense. That's a very like way of putting it, but like the fact that she was a criminal doesn't mean that she's a horrible human being, but also where she comes from, who she comes from, is as essential as anything else. The fact that those two lessons were learned means that, like, I was satisfied ultimately, from a character standpoint. From a plot standpoint, I feel like there was a little bit left to be desired, which the last episode is really where I felt this was originally 6 episodes and is now 5 a lot. But yeah, I mean, it ended with Maya Lopez looking like an exciting hero going forward. So, like, what else can I want?
I think, well, I mean, the best way for me to describe it, and after me, I'll throw it to you, Kevin, but I think I don't think frustrated is the word I'll use. I'll just use the same thing that I said last week about kind of a little disappointed in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that the last episode, not to say that anything was bad by any means, but all of it just felt like just they throwing stuff at you in like 30, I think it was like 34, 35 minutes or whatever it was. And it just happens like so quick. And, it's kind of hard to get a grasp and a real feel for everybody and everything. And I think part of it is just you want to see this characters in this world a little bit more. The family stuff I thought
Mm-hmm.
actually was pretty good in episode 4. The Fisk stuff as well, good in episode 4. And then 5 is kind of just like this really like roller coaster, super fast, off the highway ramp, just trying to get to a close. And I think, for me at this point, when it comes to MCU shows, especially with some of the stuff that we've gotten recently, it's been more difficult to digest it for me as you start to notice stuff like this. I can't say it enough. I'll repeat it again, like last week. As far as the way that they went about uh how this went. I don't know what happened in terms of production and stuff like that, but there was definitely a dropping of the ball in terms of how this was presented,
Mm-hmm.
especially at the end. So I wish it could have been done a little bit better. I love Maya. I love Maya as a character. I really enjoy the her family. I think that I would have loved to see like a more deep dive into them as well. That would have been a lot more fun. And yeah, it's hard to like go into it too in like real in depth because it's like you're only here for so long. I feel like it ended so abruptly. But Kevin, give me your thoughts on how you felt about these final 2 episodes.
Yeah, I think probably episode 4 to me might have been just like the overall, just like really satisfying good video, like good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like I'm someone who the Marvel Knight stuff, like almost all of Daredevil, most of Punisher, part like first season of Jessica Jones, Luke Cage until they killed Cottonmouth off. That's some of my favorite MCU stuff. Like that's some of, like out of everything, like Marvel stuff that's come out, Daredevil is probably my favorite. So I was excited, and that episode kind of felt like it fit a bit more even into a lot of that.
Mhm.
And like, I do agree. Like the last episode, I really loved how they did certain things and kind of the setting for it. But it did feel like it was rushed, which is very frustrating. And like I share that sentiment. There's parts of this that was frustrating. Like it shouldn't feel like it should have had an extra episode when the first episode was a recap. Like it shouldn't have that. Like you could have had that. And I feel like there's a lot of ways in which they weren't, it just feels like they didn't entrust the full story to be told in the way that maybe people wanted it to be told. I mean, you have things like the way it came out, you have the way it just dropped, like, oh hey, it's 5 episodes real quick. The way that they didn't say, hey, we're doing Marvel Spotlight and here's the first one. They had Echo that was going to come out, and then later on they were like, oh hey, we're also going to have this thing that's separate, so if you don't like it, don't worry, because it's not really da 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 da. I know they phrase it a little bit different, but a lot of those things, it's almost kind of saying, "Hey, look, we don't know how it's going to be fully." And of course, with the recent uh, things that Marvel has come out with recently, I understand sometimes the way you want to show that, but I feel like if they would have just let it show how they wanted to originally, it could have ended in a lot better fashion. Like I said, I feel like even the flashbacks, I feel like there's probably another whole story in a lot of that, because I thought it was really cool the way it would call back, but there's times where I was like, I kind of almost forgot which particular thing that character was doing, and I feel like there could have been
Yeah.
a little bit more. So then I was really, I don't know, it just hit a little bit better. But I thought it was good and I enjoyed it. But that last part, like you said, I feel like it was kind of like it was rushed. Like it just felt like it was real quick. Like
Like they
I'm
needed to
rewatching
find
part.
a way to end it because it's almost like they didn't know how to end it
You know what it
necessarily.
felt like to me? You ever been like a group of people and you're telling a long story and you get the feeling, mostly probably just because you're anxious, that people aren't enjoying it, so like you rush through the end of it? That's what it felt like. It felt like they were like, people don't like this, so we need to get out of it. And whether or not that's true, I don't think it's true. But as I said last week, if the people presenting a story feel like they're not that confident in it, the audience can smell that 1,000 miles away.
Yep.
Like in the what I felt, which was really disappointing, is it felt like, given that I'm sure they shot way more because they're supposed to have 6 episodes, it felt like at some point someone in a suit at Marvel said that the flashback stuff with her powers was too confusing or something and wasn't confident in it, and they cut it down to the bare bones. Because that's the stuff I'm most interested in. It's like, okay, we know Echo's a good fighter, we know she has this story, but what is like this power that she has that's been seeded throughout, but if until like the very end is where it really becomes like a superpower. The fact that that is a like 10 minutes at most feels like, are you not confident that audiences will enjoy that? And it's just really disappointing because, like I said, they seeded it really well in my opinion, and this is a character that has a lot of potential, I think, to be a character that's around for a while. So like I want to know how, I don't need like a sheet with numbers with her power set or whatever, but I want to know how this works, what she can do, how
Yeah.
does she feel about it? Like the biggest thing is, how does she feel about the fact that she has powers because of her
Yeah.
ancestors? How does Bonnie feel about the fact that she was beating people up? How does it, what I mean? Like all these different things, like the fact that we just got out of that Kingpin got like rushed away by an aide. It's like, I suppose that is the end of the literal story of Kingpin in Oklahoma, but it's shortchanging the audience to think that that's all we were interested in.
Yeah. Yeah. And, more so than anything else, like, I always feel like if you're going to tell this particular story about a culture like this, you should really tell it. You should really go into it. You should really deep dive into it and really embrace it. And it almost feels like here, here, just here. That's like just giving it as opposed to, just really like showing people the whole 9 yards. And that's why like it's such, in stark contrast to Miss Marvel, where it really feels like they as much as you can for a Disney property really went in and tried to show you the culture of Miss Marvel and
Hmm.
Kamala Khan and her family and everything that goes along with that. I mean, doing the damn partition that's a lot. I mean, to me, that's like a lot for a property of Disney. So that's where I would love to know what happened exactly.
Yeah.
The exact moment that somebody thought that, hey, let's cut this out. And kind of, yeah, like that's where I kind of walk away with a little bit of an empty feeling to a degree because it's like I like this character a lot. And especially translating from Hawkeye into here, it's you like you want to know this person more. You want to know this family more, And it just feels like yeah, they didn't believe in it. And I realized that, a lot of there are people who will watch this and kind of miss that part of it to a degree. And I know Jake said that, hey, fans will notice stuff along those lines. But there are also people who be like, "Oh, I thought this was pretty good, and I thought that they did a decent job, and it looks like they believed in this show because of the fact that they decide to, okay, we're going to show this bit of culture, but when I tell you surface level, there's a difference, you can tell.
Hmm.
And that's why I use Miss Marvel as the example, that there's a difference between these two shows in the way that it felt like
Yeah.
Marvel believed in something like Miss Marvel way more than something like this. and
Hmm.
and unfortunately, like, what it affects more than anything else is the people who worked on this show,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
I think, considering what I'm sure they probably dealt with, I think they did a pretty damn good job considering whatever the circumstances were. So I want to give them
Yeah.
a lot of credit and give the actors a lot of credit too, because all those people, Maya's family, Biscuits, grandmother, Bonnie, her uncle,
Yeah.
like everybody involved, um, I really just enjoyed, because there was just a very genuine nature to all of them,
Hmm.
and you could see that in such a limited time. But I really like those folks. So I hope I see them again in some type of
Hmm.
capacity, because I really think it's a place I want to revisit, and that's where, more so than anything else, that's where my disappointment and frustration comes from. Kevin, we're like, in terms of the Fisk stuff.
Hmm.
You say you like the Daredevil stuff, you like the Netflix stuff. How did you feel like Wilson Fisk was handled in this series?
Um, I think it was mostly pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I feel like he kind of for a lot of people there was that concern, even though he's comically he'll dress like that in Hawkeye. When people first saw him with like the
Hmm.
different suit, you're like, I don't know. He's kind of like, how is this gonna be? Is he kind of like how he was before? How is that going? I think it was handled well. Like, I think just the whole fear-inducing element. Like, I mean, the fact that the whole scene at the skating rink, and then that those people want to kill Maya, and then she just killed a couple other people. All this was going on, and they just get a call and literally just like head out. And the way that they show him his kind of narcissistic version of love, like the sense of like, I love
Yeah,
you, but not enough. I hated that everyone caught on. I thought I was being a good observer by going, he's not actually learning sign language,
Yeah.
and people who care really do. But then she even said it too, and I was like, oh man, I thought that was a good,
The man
observation.
developed AI technology instead of
that's
just learning
crazy.
sign language. And the thing
Yes.
is, like, that actually, I believe that. I believe that Wilson Fisk would do that.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. I mean, I can, yeah, and so I just thought that some of that was really good. Like, some of what I wrote, even in a review about it, was just kind of the idea that she like the difference between viewing family insofar as someone's useful to you, I think was really displayed by Kingpin in this. Like, your family as far as in as so far as you can help me do something. He's not like, oh, I'm just evil and I'm taking over the world. He's kind of scarier. He's actually motivated by something he kind of thinks is right, which is usually what produces the worst things anywhere. And so I think that it was pretty solid. I'm still not sure what to make of at the very end. I'm not sure. Obviously, what happened is going to have future ramifications. So I don't know if there's this kind of route they're going to go where they say, hey, even though he's healed, he was always going to be this way, or it wasn't just his childhood trauma. This dude's just that way. Because I mean, obviously, he's not going to be healed, and next we're going
Right.
to see him in Spider-Man being pals with him. So I thought it was solid. I mean, I enjoyed seeing it that way. I enjoyed seeing kind of him. I mean, he was one of my favorite characters on that. Like, I know he's a bad guy, but like when he did the parable of the Good Samaritan at the end of that Daredevil season 1, that's like, oh man, that's one of my favorite scenes. But I thought he did pretty good.
Yeah, I thought the thing that I really liked about I was afraid that they would put too fine a point about like the love thing, because I think what makes him compelling in relation to Maya is that I think a lot of people with poor media literacy will read stories about like people who apparently love someone else and then betray them and say they never really love them. It's like I think that actually completely misunderstands human nature. I think that people who betray the people they love can do that because they either don't have a full conception of love or they're able to compartmentalize, and that is what's like the thing that's scarier to me is not that someone who says they love me is lying the whole time, but they do actually love me, but that doesn't stop them from doing horrible things to me. Like that is
Yeah.
way scarier to me. And I think that as far as Wilson Fisk is able to understand the concept of love, and he's not
Mhm.
really able to, as far as he is, he thinks what he feels for Maya is love because they have a very mutually beneficial relationship. He clearly cares about her safety. But what he doesn't realize is definitionally actual true love means that one's own station in life, one's own money, one's own power, etc., has to come behind someone's. And so the fact that he's unwilling to give up anything for her means that it's completely surface level love. And obviously that has to do with the fact that, his dad, Herc from The Wire, was killed with a hammer. Like that obviously all comes back to it. And so I think that the way that, Vincent D'Onofrio, or as Dalvin would say, D'Onofrio, I think is just, he's an incredible actor because I think in a lot of times when you watch a lot of TV, especially mainstream stuff that's not transgressive, you can kind of tell what the energy of every character is, what they're going to do. Like, you kind of be like, this character is going to feel this way. Every scene with Kingpin in it, through Daredevil, through, Hawkeye, through this, I genuinely never know how menacing he's going to be, if he's going to be loving. He's like the whole scene with them in, her grandma's house, drinking the Shasta Cola, which, wow, really only go to the dollar store, I guess. But drinking the Shasta Cola, at any moment you could have told me he was going to give her a hug or try to kill her. Every single moment. And I think that is like, that's why he's a compelling character. But if he's going to keep beating people up with his fists, he really needs to wear another color. Like his dry cleaner probably fucking hates him. It's like blood on white again. Like what the hell?
Yes, that was actually that little pretend dinner scene was some good tension for in that episode. And yeah, Fisk, I think the thing that you mentioned, Kevin, about the whole idea of Kingpin being healed at the end is an interesting plot point, because as we see in the post credit scene, he is going to run for mayor, and presumably he's going to win. And what does that mean for his character? How does he view everything? Is his healing the reason that he decides, I'm gonna run for mayor, and eventually, um for what can be assumed to kind of use his power as mayor to get rid of all of heroes and vigilantes and things along those lines? I don't know.
Yeah.
That should be interesting to see. But I thought Vincent was awesome, as per always when he's been around in these shows, and I'm glad that we're going to continue to get him. And I thought the interplay between him and Maya was great, like throughout the entire time. You love to see your mains go back and forth and have
Yeah.
like legitimate tension and things along those lines, and that's the type of stuff that you want to see overall.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna say
yeah,
real quick, it
yeah,
made me
sure.
think they've been calling or saying how Kingpin's gonna be in a sense the street level Thanos, who also had a daughter who was an assassin, who he had a complicated relationship with. Now I know
Good
she's not his
call.
daughter, but kind of that relation and that kind of when she says that, like Jake, you said about the love thing, it's like you do, but not in a way that's like it's easy to say you didn't. It's like no, they did care, but their care sometimes can be like true love wouldn't like override someone else's will to like then insist on what you want in a sense, and like how he wanted to do the thing with the stone and tosses her off, and then
Yeah.
how Kingpin works with Maya here.
Yeah, if Kingpin threw Maya off that cliff, he would get the Soul Stone. Like he really does love her.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes. Yes. I wanted to go around with each of you, and let's go over like some of our most positive moments of the series, because it just feels like it came and went so quickly. So want to just dive in and see some of the things that we like. Jake, I'll start with you. What were some of your favorite scenes, moments, anything that stood out?
So I really loved the scene with her and her grandma in episode 4. Or is it episode 5? I think it was episode 4. I watched them back to back.
Episode 4. Yeah.
Because the thing I liked about it was that it I think in a lot of times in fiction, we kind of let a character being like old and sympathetic kind of yada yada the mistakes they made, and I like that Maya doesn't like forgive her automatically for abandoning her, because obviously I understand it's complicated that her daughter died, etc. But I think that in a lot of ways, she, she knows that her, you know, letting, not being there for her as she grew up, Pop probably did in some way lead to some of the trouble she had. And that if I'm Maya, it would be a little bit too neat for her to forgive her just because she said she's sorry. Because it's like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like I can imagine from being if he was 8 years old and because like my grandma hated my dad, my grandma decided not be in my life anymore. That would be something that would be really hard for me to forgive, and I wouldn't be able to forgive just because she said your dad was a bad guy. And so like I like that she made her case, Maya made her case, and they I think come to some greater understanding. But it isn't like and now the arc of their relationship is over and everything's okay. And so like that I like that a lot because I was really afraid it was that Maya was going to be like, I guess you were right. So it's like, no, that just because she's a sweet old lady and, had her reasons, but like, it was a shitty thing to do. I thought that was really nice and was morally gray in a way that you usually don't see in things like this.
Yes, yes. And how about you, Kevin? What are some moments, some things that stood out to you, whether it's the last couple or just overall in the series?
Yeah, I mean, two of the fighting scenes were just cool. Obviously,
Hmm.
the big scene where she first comes in, and more so than just the fighting, what I really loved is the sound of everything. The way they use sound in the whole show was really cool. There's even a guy a friend of mine. He didn't like the show, but he was like the sound was awesome. Like he liked whether it was the soundtrack or the way they use sound when it came to her. Like and it's funny because you see on the captions, and I didn't notice, but I had the captions on, and you see on that part where she snaps the neck, it's like two heartbeats beating, and you can hear it kind of, and then it's like, oh, one's only one now or something. She cracks the neck, and then the scene
Mm.
in the roller skating rink that uses the music, and she just like throws the music on super loud. It's like the equivalent of Daredevil when he shuts the lights off. It's like the same thing, but like she's using, hey, I'm gonna make it a little bit level so you can't hear me coming and doing these things, and I love a good needle drop, play a music fight scene. I'm like a sucker for those, like all the time. Play
Kevin,
some music.
you're speaking my language.
Yes. Yeah.
The amount of times that I'll come in and be like, oh, like Jake, what's your review of Eternals? I mean, the fact they started off with "Time" by Pink Floyd was great. Just like
Yes. Yes. I love those. Like and I started realizing that recently. I was like, man, why do I watch Baby Driver so much? And like the whole movie's like a big needle drop. Like,
yeah,
they just play so many songs. But one particular thing I really liked, and I guess it's a theme throughout the episode, and you guys mentioned it too, was also more so her environment, like the family and the people that are around. What was so cool about the characters, and I think a lot of people enjoyed them, but there's such a uniqueness of those characters to a lot of us, and the way they joke around and the way they say certain things that we're like, that's really funny because like that uncle always will always talk like that, or that person will talk like that, or people have that grandma that like, oh, we don't know what's wrong, but we're gonna go take you to her because she's the one that can fix you up or do whatever. Or there was something about the characters they had. I mean, like Biscuits was great. It was good to have someone like him contrast with Maya. He's over here just selling his PlayStation for $100, which you know, I don't know if that fixes a truck, but like he's trying to do that, and a lot of times I don't even love goofy characters all the time, but I was like, man, this dude's funny. And for a lot of us, there's even one of the big native movies that came out a long time ago is called Smoke Signals, and Smoke Signals is about these two cousins that go on this journey, da 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 da. But they have a flashback, and a little kid's playing one of the two characters, and that little boy that everyone knows, that's him in the movie. So for a lot of people, we were like, "Oh, we know this dude. Like, we've followed him,
he
seen him.
he played a
He's like,
young Adam Beach apparently. Oh, okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah." And so there's a lot of things like that you see. Like I said, if people have seen Reservation Dogs or other shows,
Yeah.
a lot of these actors were like, "Oh, we've been seeing him in movies. Oh, he was in Prey. Oh, they might have been in Killers of the Flower Moon. Oh, they might have been in this and that." We're like, "Yeah, these are some of the big ones for us, and they might have just had a small role even." Or there was a guy named Dallas Goldtooth. He's a comedian. He's the one. Have y'all seen Reservation Dogs?
I have
Um,
not.
I've heard of it, but I
oh,
haven't seen
okay.
it.
Well, absolutely, y'all should watch it. I even
Oh, it's
put out
okay.
a
All right.
summary of all the things that said it was like the number one show of the last, whatever. It's amazing. It's awesome. But
Oh,
like,
I know it's
it-
critically acclaimed. I've been hearing
yeah,
a lot of good things about
yeah.
it.
And
Yeah,
it's
for
what's
sure.
great about it. It's not like critically acclaimed, like, oh, it's real bougie and whatever. No, it's just
No,
funny
you're right,
and
right,
really
right.
good. And then randomly will make you cry. Like a good comedy can just throw you in there out of nowhere. But yeah, so I loved the kind of humor they would use and the family. Like you said, I almost wanted to kind of like just sit with, make it even smaller, not even street level. This is like not street level. This is like, country small town level. Like I just want to sit with their family and hang out and have a whole episode where they're
Hmm.
just doing that, or just hanging out, saying jokes, things like that. And so yeah, those are a couple
Yeah.
of things that I really enjoyed from the show.
Scully and Chula. Those scenes I all enjoyed all of them.
Yeah.
They hit a very hashtag washed agenda
Oh
uh
no.
thing for
He's right
thing in
though.
my heart. It's I am right. I know I am.
Yeah,
I know I
Scully
am.
is real washed.
Oh my gosh! Like just the way his overtures towards her, trying to get her back in his good graces. I love stuff like that. It was just so charming. It was just
Yeah.
very charming stuff between them. I just like really. It's like you loves to see like stuff like that, and the actors got good chemistry and stuff like that.
Hmm.
That little interplay, those little moments, those little looks, especially like
Mm.
when she thinks that he just goes off and then he comes back with the stuff
Mhm.
at the beginning of episode 6. Yeah, that was really cool, man. I I like that.
I want
Yeah,
if they ever bring
yeah.
Maya back for something, I hope they bring back some of these characters. Is the big thing, especially you got to get Scully in there. Scully can be her man in the chair, but he's very slow with it and deliberate with his movements.
Yes, absolutely. You're making me excited at the idea of a potential season 2 of this.
Hmm.
This I think not just them. I'm more of a Biscuits guy than most people are. I like Biscuits. He's just a goofy character. It's nice to have a goofy family member that's just kind of there to help. Good comic foil. I would have liked to get more Bonnie in this. I
Yeah.
thought it would have been. I think that's kind of like the one thing where it's just like, damn, we really wish there was more of the interplay between her and mine, because I thought that the scenes that when they were kids really kind of told
Hmm.
and sold the story of how close that they are and were.
Yeah.
And it feels like they focused on that much less as adults here in the present day. But I would have liked to see more of that. um yeah, like I said, the Fisk stuff is really good overall. And as far as it's funny, I was thinking about this because somebody mentioned it. So for a show that had a very mature rating, it's not as violent as
No.
they were making it out to be.
Yeah.
At
No,
least I
I
didn't
think
think so.
it is a mature. It needs the mature rating for some of the stuff, just
Yeah.
because TV has a lower bar. Like TVMA, I believe, is a lower bar than R is for movies. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? So like, I'm not surprised. I think it was a mistake for them to lean into it though, because it's not
Yeah.
actually that visceral.
The trailer made it seem like it was going to be the Punisher. Like
Well,
that's
yeah,
what I
they, they
thought it
they
was
they
going to be
told you
like.
to change your rating on Disney Plus, change it to MA, because you need to get ready for this, or else you can't watch it. But yeah, it was one of those deals. So I mean, I didn't necessarily mind that it wasn't. I think there's just a lot more stuff that I felt like could have been done as far as the flashback scenes, as was alluded to earlier. I think I wish actually they could have leaned more into that in episodes 4 and 5. I know we saw some more, but I really like that stuff. And just to kind of get an understanding of it, I thought the way that the first 3 episodes began really gave it a lot of juice. And it kind of just, as we talked about earlier, comes in a little more haphazardly
Hmm.
as the show concludes. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I'm in a very difficult place with this show, because there's a lot of things that I liked about it. I just feel like it was taken away from us at the same
Hmm.
time. So that's kind of where I'm like in a catch 22 with this show. But
Hmm.
what are you gonna do as far as that's concerned? So are there any other parts of this series, Kevin, that you wanted to talk about, like in terms of just overall culture? I mean, you talked about representation earlier and what that
Hmm.
meant to you, and family members and things along those lines. Is there anything else that stood out to you or that you wanted to mention in the
Yeah.
back of your head?
Um, I think not one necessarily particular to ours, but I did want to I think comment on one thing I've heard a little bit. I know there's been a lot of people talking about, hey, it seems every time there's a non-white character, they're always doing their cultural thing and their ancestors, and each time that whether it's Black Panther, Shang Chi, Ms. Marvel, da,
Hmm.
da, da, and there's a part of me at first I was like, that is true. Why did and sometimes it seems like, man, some of these shows maybe they're trying to do so much it's hard to like put in there. And one person, they even gave their critique, but they were like, which we understand. They're like, hey, we might never have a show like this again. But
Hmm.
I do think it's important that like there that can be a critique, and not every show has to be that. But I think it's also important that like it shows like maybe a contrast to a healthy culture kind of takes into account everything that's coming from before it. Like it's like the idea when people talk about what is like white heritage versus someone who's Irish or someone who's Yugoslavian, rather than just saying white. Like white isn't like a thing that has ancestors unless you're talking about like the
Right.
South, which those aren't the. I don't want to see that hero. Although that might be a good idea for a villain. You just see him; he's empowered by his ancestors. Jerry Jones is behind him, just rooting him
Hmm.
on.
Yeah.
But I do think it's kind of a cool thing that these shows have had it, but that it's like, man, this might be like to keep showing it, because we don't say whenever we see a show like Wolverine or all these others, oh man, there keeps being these Lone Ranger heroes. I'm like, all the heroes keep being these Lone Ranger ones, but we don't say there's too much of that all the time. And I think it's important that we are able to share, like, hey, we are rooted and connected into that. Now, do I think everyone has to? No. And that's what I think was also cool too. Is there's a lot in this show. I was happy that there wasn't some slaughter at the powwow. I was glad there wasn't some slaughter and just seeing a whole bunch of native
Yeah.
people getting killed somewhere. I was like, I just don't want to see that. Like I said, love Killers on the Flower Moon. I don't know how many times I'm going to rewatch it because it's a really hard watch. And so I really enjoyed that part of it, and I was glad that there was some elements where it was you were also able to see people who are alive and native. Like you said, oh hey, we like Scully and we like Chula, just their interactions, and we're getting to see people like that, because generally people don't see us anywhere besides being, you think we're over here just meditating and talking to the ancestors. And I thought it was funny they even joke about that whenever he says, oh, are the ancestors talking to you again? And he's like, well, tell them to give me something good like the Powerball numbers. And it's like people joke like that. Like people are here. We're here and just regular citizens connected into our cultures doing things. It's not always just tragedy or the stoic wisdom sharing guy. There's people who are like that then tell a stupid, very kiddie level joke in the same sentence. And that's part of a lot of our humor. And I thought they captured a lot of that. I think that's what kind of lends to the frustration that the show I think was good and almost really, really, really good, just based on the characters they had and some of the setups they had for everything. But yeah,
Yeah.
overall, I just loved again. Um, Even if it's not the greatest ever, like something like a Reservation Dogs. Hey, we should have our shows that are pretty good and pretty solid, but aren't the best ever either. It doesn't have to be the best ever or the worst ever. Hey, we can have some that are
Right.
solid.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think to what you were saying about, that like white characters don't have to, have things about their ancestors. I really do think, as someone who is like a white American mutt, in that I don't really try, I don't consider myself, I mean, I'm mostly Irish and Italian, but not enough where like I think that is a thing that like I both am not confused, but interested, and it is something alien to me, the idea of being very in touch with one's past. And so I think that it is something that I like to see. And the thing I think that both Echo and Miss Marvel do very well, and Black Panther too. It just, I think with a lot of people who grew up like me, I have a hard time imagining how someone could be like spiritual in that way, but also live a modern life, which is just me being, myopic. But when you see it, it's like, oh no, it's easy. You can, those things that are integrated in your life. I think that is the important thing, because I think, like you said, there's too much of a temptation to write anyone who has any sort of spiritual life or any sort of like connection with their ancestors as someone who is completely of away from the modern world, who just prays all day. But it's like, no, there
Yeah.
is a way that those things are melded together. And I
Mhm.
don't know, I think it's also just much more interesting. Like, I think that it just, you know the life of someone who is connected with their culture is more interesting than someone who isn't. I can say as someone who isn't. Like, I wish I had that sort of thing, you know. And so I
Mhm.
think that it's a beautiful thing when it's shown. Obviously, I think you can overdo it, and it would be nice
Sure.
occasionally to see a character that isn't that. But it's like, I don't
Oh,
know, if
for
you're doing a
sure.
show about a Choctaw woman going back to her hometown, it's going to be about her connection to her family.
Without without the past, you cannot tell the present or the future. People got to remember that at the end of the day. When it comes to these stories and when it comes to these people, I think our history is our history, and we should look at our history.
Mhm.
People hate looking back because of for plenty of reasons, and when you notice that plenty of white people who critique these things have problems with them because they don't like looking back at some of the things that happened back then because they were responsible for the said things. So at the end of the day, when you get a Black Panther or Miss Marvel or something like Echo, it's so important to kind of, like I said, embrace the richness of these cultures, embrace these people. Like you said, Kevin, these people are like you and me, just
Mhm.
chilling, just hanging out, making cracking jokes just like anybody else.
Having
It
bad
doesn't have to
backs.
having bad backs, canes, all them things. Like all of those things come into mind, and that's why these stories are told. That's why you get a reservation dogs. That's why you
Mhm.
get stuff like this, because it's, yes, representation, yes, but also because these people have stories to tell and they're interesting, and it can all be, it can all be one thing. It doesn't have to be, it can all be different things. It doesn't have to be just one specific thing or the other. It's just that people choose to look at what they want to look at, and it's not because of, oh well, this person just, they just want to be the, what is it, the woke culture or whatever that they want to go along with when it
Yeah.
comes to these types of things. Is, it's not really, it's never really about that. it's
Mhm.
it's uh, it's always the implication when it comes to these things.
And no,
But
but see, it is worth mentioning, and people know this. You and I are both, we tested positive for the woke mind virus, so take everything he said with a grain of salt. Um, we're bond paid for by Big Woke. Um,
yes, yes, bought, paid for, and here to stay.
yes.
Yeah, and I think at the, yeah, when it comes down to it at the end of the day, and that's why when, I know Jake mentioned Blue Beetle last week. That's why when you see something like that, and you see culture being represented in that type of way, you see that family and the way that they interact and everything like that, and then you see something like this. I mean, it's not too much different. It's not too different.
Mhm.
That's really kind of the point. That's what the point of having representation in these types of mediums, and why they're so important, and why I'm glad, despite everything that happened with this show was able to come out, and we were able to enjoy it. To spin this forward before we go, Kevin, do you have any grander thoughts on the MCU at large, where we stand now, as kind of, we're in a different type of feel, and a different type of year for sure, because we're only
Mhm.
getting one movie and a bunch of animated shows, and I think the only other live action thing that we're getting later in the year is Agatha, and that's way later in October if I'm not mistaken. So where do you think the MCU stands in your opinion, and how are you feeling about everything now?
Yeah. I try to like battle against my internal, I just want to say something different than everyone else is saying. Oh,
Hmm.
everyone's critiquing it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
let me zag the other way, or let me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm generally a little bit more of an optimist for some of this stuff, because again,
Hmm.
I'm super nerdy on comics, and there's a part of me that's like, not everything has to be Winter Soldier. Not everything has to be something like that. And so there's part of me that's like, man, there's some comic runs that came out that I like, that were like, 5 issues. It came out and it was cool, and that's all it was. Um, but there's been some stuff that's not as great. I say all
Yeah,
that to say
no,
there's
it's
been some
totally fair.
stuff that's been a little bit disappointing, and a little, like, I think because of all the changes, also people don't watch these kind of movies in a vacuum. It throws a
Mm.
lot, kind of like what Jake says about when everyone knows about some of these things going on. And even if you're just kind of interested in Marvel, like whether you're on Instagram, Twitter, whatever, you're going to be hearing about all kinds of stuff. So and so backed out, They changed the thing on this. Mahershala Ali hated the script, so they're doing this whole thing again. Oh, a
Mhm.
director backed out. And even if it's like what happens is you don't even realize it's going to give you a lens for whatever's going to come out. It's going to kind of keep doing that. And I think it kind of gives you a feel. For me, it makes me feel like uneasy because I don't feel like I know where they're going with it. Like I don't feel like, hey, what is the aim and of some of these things that are coming out? What's the I don't want to say what's the point, but like what's the because I don't care if it necessarily has to go to a Thanos event every time. But like I think they want it to. And so like if you're going to, then it has to be tighter. Like I shouldn't
Yeah.
go from I mean, there's some movies that came out that were good. Why is it gonna be like 10 years between a Shang-Chi movie? I love Shang-Chi. I thought it was a really good movie. And we're not
Same.
gonna see him for a long time in
Mm-hmm.
anything, like not even an appearance.
There were
And
like
and
what 2 years between Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2.
yeah.
I mean,
So I,
So
I I
I
think
think
that's where I'm at a
yeah.
bit with it.
Well, Kevin, I think your point is very astute. I wasn't on the What If pod, but one of the things that came away from it for me when I saw the Happy Hogan Avengers episode, it was just like a regular Avengers episode. Avengers show up and kind of deal with like one criminal, and I really think that they should think about not doing the whole like let's wait 10 years for the super huge event to bring every single hero involved to kind of
Mhm.
to bring them back and have that big type of moment. Yo, the Avengers fought the Masters of Evil like a million times and put those dudes in prison. Like you could do you could do a movie based off that. You could do so many different stories. Like, that's the thing. Like you could tap into so many comic book stories that are like really interesting and very and honestly on a much smaller scale. And I think you would be able to get things over in a better way.
Yeah.
I said this before. I feel like the street level stuff is going to translate, I think, better as they get into the Daredevil of it all, and as we see what happens with the next Spider-Man film. But I tend to side with Jake when he talks about on previous pods as far as like the years waiting for stuff like this and to kind of like materialize because you want to because people aren't going to be we're seeing what's happening in the business of movies. It is changing forever, like
Mhm.
in a way that I don't think anybody could have ever expected. So I think the MCU in that way is in trouble because I think even despite the fact that they're trying to change things for the better and try and get the TV stuff right and correct that stuff, you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube once it comes
no.
out.
I mean, and I think
So
Echo is
that's
a good
where they're
example of this though, because Hawkeye came out in Christmas 2021, but they
right.
started developing this series in March of 2021. Like I understand, like TV does should not take 3 years to make. It just shouldn't
Hmm.
because there's just no. I mean, I'm worried about this Agatha spinoff. WandaVision premiered 3 years ago, and its spinoff is not going to come out. Like that's so stupid. Like
Yeah.
it's bad business. People are excited about a character. You should have that character in
Yeah.
another thing in a year. Like I don't. I mean, I
Yeah.
know I'm sounding like a 1930s like just make the picture no matter what it is. But I think that some of this shit is like
Yeah.
clearly
You're
time
right.
is not the problem here.
Yeah.
I think that people want to act like time solves everything. I think in Hollywood, it actually can be the worst thing in the world. If you have a year just to stew doing nothing, you make nothing but bad decisions. I think they should just be like, we have a movie. Let's make this. People like this character. Let's put her in something else. Get it
Yeah.
done. Find someone who likes it, and give. It just feels so backwards to like try to plan these things because like. I really think I'm really interested in seeing how the Agatha series goes because people loved Agatha, and I'm if the show does not do that well, I think that should be a wake up call of like you can't be asking people to wait 3.5 years for a
Yeah.
character they like. That's insane.
Well, yeah, and a character
Yeah,
it's not Daredevil rolling out. It's
No.
Agatha. Like
right.
people wouldn't have known the general people wouldn't have known that much. Even people into comics are not like, oh, I'm just reading Agatha all the time. Like this moment and Catherine Hahn playing her, maybe people go, oh, she's a really good character. Let's see what's going on. And it's like, nope, let's wait several, what is that, like 1,000 days, and then get you excited for it again. And you're like, oh, okay, I mean, I guess. I mean, I'll watch it and stuff, but it doesn't have the same. When it first was announced, it's like, oh, that's cool. And now I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'm gonna watch it. I'll
Yeah.
see it.
And once again, it's not. I think people who don't know how this stuff works will be like, "Well, it takes time." Like, no, it actually doesn't. It actually does not take 3 years to make a television show. It just doesn't. You know.
And I think you also have to consider that, and this is another point that Jake has always made is like you got to make TV. When you're making TV like it's movies, like you're destined to have the issues that they've had throughout this whole Disney Plus run. So, I mean, they're starting to correct it now, but even then, like you have something like Ironheart, which has already been shot, and they're just they decided for whatever reason to leave it to the side for now to I guess either add some extra stuff or reshoots and stuff like that, which obviously reshoots are a part of the whole thing. But at the same time, this is something that was done, like it's been done for a while. So for them to go back
Yeah.
and to make more changes and tinker and tweak and tinker and tweak, how much more tweaking do you want to do? And it's a serious question. How much more do you
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
want to do in terms of stuff like that? So
Yeah.
it's like you could still see the issues, even if as they're trying to correct them. There's still from a business side, which I think it's a big part of this. At the end of the day, is you have to it, like Jake said, time. Like time is it's not good. It's not
Yeah.
good to be in the situation that they're in at this moment. So,
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff remains to be seen. And listen, this isn't even being like too negative in a
No.
way, because I think it's just the reality of what the business is today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they should be focused on the changing times and
Yeah.
adjusting to that, as opposed to continuing at the pace that they
Yeah.
And
Because
if yeah, go. Sorry, Kevin.
all I was gonna say is I think a lot of the things people talk about, because I'll talk about a lot of this stuff in context of the superhero fatigue
Yeah.
concept, which I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I get what you people mean by that, but I don't think we can ever say that until a good movie doesn't have people going and
Exactly.
watching it a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Like the good movies have still been having people. I think it's diluted. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
that can be diluted, and especially, oh my god, all the stuff from Sony, and then
Yeah.
most of DC. All of that has diluted what the idea is, and I
yeah.
think that there's a course correction to a degree, because when the MCU rolled out, it's the first time were able to visually see a realistic looking
Mm-hmm.
superhero. Like when you look at graphics, even just 5, 10 years before Iron Man, those
Mm-hmm.
graphics would not have been the same, you know?
No.
And so it's the
Right.
first times anyone's ever even be able to see those. So of course it's going to skyrocket to a degree. And there's going to be a natural drop to some degree for some of the ones that aren't as big. But it's hard to talk about superhero fatigue until we've seen some movies that everyone thinks is awesome and that
Mm-hmm.
no one goes and watches. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think the thing I go back to always is like, because you talk, Kevin, you brought up earlier about how everyone reads these things. So much of it is like the constant things being bombs. And I know I'm a broken record about this, but like, if the Marvels cost as much as the Ballad of Songbird and Stakes did, no one really would care. I'd be like, I guess it kind of underperformed. But like anything, I think that the correction they have to do, and if they don't do this, then I think the MCU is over, is like, they have to be able to live with only putting $150 million into things,
Mhm.
because it just, especially with TV shows, like with the fact that Secret Invasion cost almost $300 million, no TV show will ever make back $300 million. It's never going to happen. And I know that, and that's why I worry so much about these reshoots with Ironheart or whatever, because it's like, you're just upping the budget and you're upping the expectations. It has to do more and more and more and more. And like, these things, I feel like the reason why these things were fun to start with is that they felt like they were a little bit different, giving people different sandboxes, giving people huge budgets, but not like astronomical budgets. It's
Mhm.
like it just feels like, I guess what I'm trying to think is like, if the Marvels has to cost $250 million, how much fucking money is the Kang Dynasty going to cost? Do you know what I mean? Like, how
hmm
are you going to go? It feels like it's a place of diminishing returns, and that's why you look at things that are successes. And the people on Twitter who are like, "How does the Marvels a failure when X movie made less money than it?" It's because it cost so much fucking money. That's why it's subtraction. And so like, I feel like Echo. I'm guessing the production was cheaper than usual, although it probably was too expensive for what it was. I don't really know exactly how much it cost. I don't know if that's been publicly reported, but
Not to
like,
my knowledge. Yeah.
I hope that they take lessons from the things that are working, and give the people what they want. It really feels so much like it feels like they're psyching themselves out of like, oh my god, people really love Shang-Chi. Like, once again, we're not going to see Shang-Chi for like 7 years after the movie comes out. And
That's insane.
why?
That is
Simu Liu is
just
in the
insane.
biggest movie of the year. He's hotter than ever. And they're not. What? Why is
Doesn't make any
Shang-Chi 2
sense.
not coming out next year?
We're not gonna get another Spider-Man until 2026. Like what? Like that's insane. Like
They,
Spider-Man No Way Home was the biggest movie and one
do
of
you
the
know what?
biggest movies ever. Like
Spider-Man 1 came out in 2002. Spider-Man 3 came out in 2007. What are we doing? Like, what are we
It doesn't
doing?
make it honestly it does not
And
make sense.
the
Yeah.
reason I feel like the reason I imagine is because when they're making the Spider-Man movies, it was just Sony, the people that was what they were focused on. The problem is if Kevin Feige needs to be involved in everything, he doesn't have the time to. But like, so just like, why don't you just give a guy say, hey, you're gonna make Spider-Man movies. Hey, you're gonna make Shang-Chi movies. I know I'm a broken record, but it really just like looking at this and
No,
seeing
it
the
boggles the
horizon,
mind. It does.
seeing
Yeah.
seeing the fact that really only 2 live action things come out this year, it's like this isn't working. It
Yeah.
just it's not. If you yeah.
Every year
It's
should have at least one mega. Oh, at least a Captain America, at least a
Yeah.
Spider-Man, at
Yeah.
least one of the X-Men, at least one of those start rolling out, at least one Fantastic Four. At least
Yeah.
every year should have one or two of them. Like it should just. And I know it's easy. Hey, just put out a great movie. But I just mean like there's so many. There should at least be the ones that get people who are just kind of interested.
Mm-hmm.
That they're like, oh, we love these. And then you kind of put in some of the others that you have that flexibility with, and that you're
Mm-hmm.
like,
right.
hey, so that the whole year isn't riding on just Agatha, and so
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we will find out Deadpool 3 what that's going to be, how that's going to translate, what they're trying to do. It should be interesting. Um and yeah, this has been a lot of fun. This has been a interesting conversation to dive back
Mm-hmm.
in, like really into what the MCU has been,
Mm-hmm.
and to take a different look at a different type of show in Echo. This has been in covering the series, even as I, express my frustration to it, I can't say enough. Like again, like the representation, I think is very important, and also at the same time, I think Alakwa Cox is amazing as Maya
Yeah.
Lopez. So I would love to see
Wait,
more of her in the MCU as we keep
did I
going.
say it
So,
last week that we need to get her into the Celebrity All-Star game? That's my new take. She's like 6'1" and played
oh
high school
no, I didn't
basketball.
hear. Oh, that's right. That's
I
right. You
mean,
did mention
my
that. Yes.
take of the last couple of weeks, I've been saying, Kevin, I don't know if you've seen, I don't know how familiar you are with the films of Yorgos Lanthimos, but I learned that he
Mhm.
played semi-pro basketball in Greece in the 90s, and so my goal is to get him in the Celebrity All-Star game, because I think it would be funny to have like a fat 50-year-old Greek director in the All-Star game. So Lacko Cox has got to get in there. And also,
Oh,
what my biggest gripe with Echo, this just pissed me off so much, and I'm playing this up because it's a joke, but it pissed me off so much. They had the scene in the beginning of episode 4 where it's Maya and Fisk in 2008, okay? And on the streets of New York. And you know what I see on the back of a car? I see a bright yellow and blue license plate, which anyone in New York knows was not adopted until 2010. Get your shit together, Marvel.
that's where it all
That's
started.
great.
And I'll say this, that's not the first time I've noticed something like that. You can ask Michael Spring that when I texted him after seeing Past Lives, I'm like, this scene took place in 2013 and they have the white Excelsior ones. What the hell are we doing?
Well, hey, like I told you, there was the actress I knew who's
Mm.
one of the actresses when
Yeah.
they're playing that stickball game from a
Yeah.
long time ago, and then she
Mhm.
was in the powwow scene too. And I was
What's
like,
her name? Shout her out. Let's shout her out.
her name's Becca Boyd. She does some
Hell yeah.
modeling, she does some acting.
Salute.
She does really
Hell
cool.
yeah.
And stickball. Oh, because I think you were talking about the game too. That's called stickball. Just
Right.
for the tribes that do it, it's called stickball. People play it still all the time currently.
Oh, yeah, I'm
And
looking
she
at
actually
photos of it
plays
right
it.
now. That's
Yeah,
cool
she
as hell.
plays it too. Yeah,
Oh, hell yeah.
Choctaws kind of are pretty big in that. Like they like to talk trash a little bit to other tribes because they usually win a lot. But
Yeah.
other ones are pretty good. I haven't played it. Some they get pretty rough sometimes.
Mhm. Oh yeah, yeah. The world championship is apparently at the Choctaw Fair, so
Yeah,
they have home field advantage.
yeah. Of course.
Yes, yes.
That's awesome though.
Yes, yes. So, salute to her. Salute to
Yeah.
Echo. Wonderful time talking about this show. And Kevin, a wonderful time talking with you, sir.
Same
Where
with you
can we
guys.
follow you? Where can we find your work, my friend?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram. Those are the two main ones I'm at. Just my name, Kevin Chuculate.
Mhm.
Like I said, chocolate, but with U's. So
Yep.
CHUCULATE. I'm there mostly. I think I was on Blue Sky for like a week. I was on
Yeah.
Threads for like 2 weeks maybe, but
Yeah.
mostly Twitter and there. I've started to have a couple of comics. One comic out, one kind of short, kind of fan fiction-y type one over with Danny Moonstar going against Freddy Krueger. I just thought it would just
Oh
be a
hell
cool,
yeah.
fun matchup. Yeah,
Nice.
so if y'all want to check that, yeah, follow me there.
Awesome stuff, man. Appreciate you for joining us and giving us your perspective.
Sure,
Jake
thank you.
Christie, where can we find you, sir?
You can find me at the J Christie on Twitter. Please listen to my other podcast, Love It First Psych, where me and Andre Brera are talking about the USA Network original series Psych, starting season 5 tomorrow. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. You can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Canton _3. Follow the show at MC University Pod on all platforms. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, MC University Podcast. Check us out there. Keep getting those subscribers up. Appreciate everybody for joining and listening. And of course, the Patreon, as always, as we will be doing those bonus episodes very soon. So get in, enjoy, get in the Discord, have a lot of fun conversations, and appreciate everybody for supporting and listening. For Kevin and Jake, I'm Anthony Canton III. This has been Marvel Cinematic University, and we will talk to you next time.